that have been burnt and that swear at the Prophet. That's not what I'm interested in.
Right. And this is the thing. No one's seen me do any of that. That's why my reputation stands by itself. I'm an independent person. If I was with that and I was for it, you'd see me doing it myself. And if you criticize me for it, no problem. But that's why no one can say I've done any of that.
So am I clear to, am I accurate when I say that you follow the opinion that he was saying about Abdul Malik ibn al-Marwan, that the Prophet came at the 9th century, when 632, when the Prophet, peace be upon him, when we claimed that he died, that was a false individual, and the real individual was somebody from Iraq in the 9th century.
I'm not subscribing to that because I don't know too much about his point. However, your point was about, for me, there was other problems with the beginning of Islam.
Okay.
That's why I wanted
you asked for evidence, yeah?
Yes, the foundation is based on evidence. So what is the archaeological? And then we can go into what it is. I don't want to ask a specific question at the moment.
Yeah, no problem. So I mentioned a few individuals. So you have Bishop Sabius, the House of Agritunis. Then you've got the Doctrina Super Baptizati, again of the 7th century as well. And you got Thomas the Presbyter. So all of these come earlier on. Yeah, so these are evidences that these, again, they come from Christian sources. So we've got that. We've got carbon dated evidence, which I'm sure, are you aware of the manuscript of Birmingham? Yeah, so that's dated to the time of the Prophet, peace be upon him.
But it predates him as well.
No, because
the range.
Well, that's with everything.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, they give you a rough range,
okay,
but it's from the Prophet to the time of preservation.
But I'm being specific. So the range starts before he was even born.
The range of what though?
Of the text.
No, the range of the carbon dated dates, isn't it?
Yeah.
So that is, they give, because mathematically you have to give the range, isn't it? The highest and the lowest. So they've given the highest and the lowest. So then we take that, and then carbon dated again by the University of Oxford with 100% word accuracy. So you got manuscripts of the Quran. We've got chains of narration of the Prophet, peace be upon him, as well. Chains of narration of the companions. Chains of narrations of the companions that follow them as well. So we've got the science of hadith as well.
Okay. So get more specific. So for example.
So I'm giving you 3 different types. Yeah?
All right. So to focus in. So for example, the foundation of Islam, you have the Kaaba, which you believe was built by Adam. Was it Adam?
Yeah.
And subsequently Abraham, so forth. So what I find is that can we look at any pre-Islamic, and when I say pre-Islamic, from the 7th century time of the Prophet, that the Arabs themselves confirmed that Abraham built the Kaaba? Because I would find it strange that...
I'm just going to put you on ice for a second, yeah? So you asked me for evidence. I've given you 3 different types of evidence. You didn't respond to that. You've now moved on to the Kaaba.
Okay, if you want me to respond to the evidence, so if you can repeat the 3.
Yeah, so number 1, I was talking about the Birmingham manuscript. You then said that's a range. I said mathematically, that's what they do. They give you a range. That doesn't necessarily mean that's when it started. That doesn't necessarily mean that's where it ended. It gives you a range of when it took place.
Okay, so
do you accept that evidence?
So I accept that the Birmingham manuscript ranges from that period. However, I don't think the Birmingham manuscript doesn't necessarily describe the foundations or the establishment of the religion. We can just say the Quran dates to that time. So I don't dispute that.
So if you're accepting that there is a Quran at that time, then you now need to answer another claim, which is the Quran that was there at that time.
Yes.
If the Prophet Muhammad came with another Quran, surely there would be a conflict where people would be referring to that other Quran.
Well, we do. We have things like the Sunnah manuscript.
No, the Quran.
Yes, but that's what I'm saying. What is the Quran? Because if we look at the Sunnah manuscript, scholars will tell you there was an underlying text. So if you're appealing to the Birmingham manuscript, the next question is, do we have a Quran today that is letter for letter, dot for dot, exactly the same as the Birmingham manuscript? The answer is no. Because if I'm correct, it doesn't have the diacritical mark, and there are variations in terms of how the layering or the ordering of the text is. And what would your response to that be?
Yeah, my response response would be the same response that Christians give when we ask about manuscripts pertaining the Bible. They say that's not the main type of evidence. Yeah, that's a evidence. Now, and that also relies on induction. Correct? So induction means what you've discovered so far. So the Birmingham manuscript of the manuscripts is one of the latest manuscripts that we've discovered. So just because we don't, there is a manuscript that's in Turkey, yeah? The top copy. That's the most comprehensive one that we have at this moment in time. Doesn't now mean that there is none. Would you say that now concludes that there is none and we wouldn't find any in the future?
No, we may be, but if we're talking about facts, we can only speak on what we know.
Of course.
Anything can happen in the future.
Of course, of course.
So this is why, for example...
So that's why one point that I'm saying is it doesn't rule the fact that there's going to be more coming. The fact that we have the Birmingham manuscript that is 100% word accurate to the Quran that we have today.
What do you mean by word accurate?
What explanation do I need to give about word accurate?
Because, for example, and I appeal to the Yasser Qadi Muhammad Hijab question when he said, if I had a blank mushaf, what would you write down today? And that's where the holes in the narrative came up. So my point being
I don't understand.
Is it letter for letter, dot for dot, exactly the same as the Quran the Hadith citation that we have today?
It doesn't need to be.
So that's why I asked you, what do you mean by it's word for word the same?
Yeah, when we're talking about word for word, because we have no issue with ahrufs.
Right.
Yeah, the thing is, we haven't hidden the fact that there are ahrufs as well, because it's less than 1% of the Quran. What certain people will now do is they will take a certain manuscript and then they will say, aha, look, this is there's disparity between this one and this one, but that's not necessarily the case. And when you're talking about dots, the dots came later on. We're talking about the skeletal structure.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. So and what was your point about Yasser Qadi? I don't understand.
No, because when you said it's exactly the same, word for word, or around the summary, you said, as the Quran today, my question was, what does that mean specifically? So I appeal to Yasser Qadi because
Who's Yasser Qadi though? I don't understand.
Just a scholar, an academic.
Well, in the Quran manuscripts,
his field, I'm not sure his specific field, but he takes an academic approach. Or he's an authority. He may not be a textual scholar.
Or is he a scholar when it comes to the historicity of the Quran?
You can correct me if he's not. From what I understand, maybe.
I haven't come across that.
I can't remember his speciality.
It's definitely not the Quran and manuscripts and stuff like that. That's why when you appeal to him, that's why I thought I'd just ask you.
Okay.
Maybe you had another reason for appealing to him.
No, I just know he's an academic, a respected academic. So we can obviously look at people like Marjin Van Puin.
Right.
He's a scholar of the quranic text.
You're going to refer to Abu Bakr as well?
No, not Abu Bakr. Marjin Van Puin is more reputable.
Right.
And he says, for example, from the early manuscripts that we find, we cannot find one that corresponds to the Hafs version today. The manuscript.
Why is that important?
Because when you appeal to the Birmingham manuscript, and you said it's word for word the same as one.
Yeah, the Birmingham one is.
For me, that is a vague statement.
No, let me just maybe preface this a little bit. Right. So because I was referring to the Birmingham one, so the Birmingham one is 100% word accurate.
In what sense?
In terms of the words.
As in, word accurate to me.
Because the reason why it's word accurate and not letter accurate is because, again, there's ahrufs as well.
So are you, so that's what I'm saying, clarify what word accurate means.
Not necessarily, because...
So I'm asking you to clarify what
I have.
Yeah, but
so it incorporates the ahrufs as well,
So you're saying that ahruf can be incorporated,
of course,
into the Birmingham manuscript?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I won't refute that because I don't have any evidence to go against it. I can pull it up and I'll have a look where the variants are. But if there are words,
you can check it.
Yeah,
just like I said.
If the words are in different order, for example, or it uses different words, then we'll have to define what is the aruf And remember, you have qira'at, however you say it. So you have to be able to give a definition of what the aruf is and what the qira'at is, and then we analyze the text to see if it is present within that text. But according to my understanding, you had scholars like Al-Sayuti, who said there were so many opinions. There's about 50 plus opinions of the scholars what the difference between the qira'at and the aruf is. We cannot actually confidently know. We can assume what that means, but how can we evidence it with 100% certainty? We don't know.
The only issue with the only issue with what you said is just because you can't classify something, it means it's vague. So the ahruf is not something that there's difference of opinion about. The ahrufs, and then the qira'as that follow from the ahrufs, they are going to be numerous depending on who the qari is. So that's the thing. It's about the categories that you're putting them in. It's not necessarily about the ahrufs themselves, which are less than 1%. So that's why I wanted to kind of distinguish. You can have a discussion about, okay, how do we categorize them? There's no issue about that. Yes, different scholars will have different. Some will say 7, some will say 10, some will say 11, but they will not differ about the ahrufs themselves. You see, they will differ about the categories. They will not differ about the ahrufs.
So how can you have 7?
Have you understood what I said, though? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
But then how can you have 7 or 10?
Okay.
Either there's 3 extra from your prophet and from Allah, or they're not.
No. So are you talking about ahruf or qira'ah?
Yeah, you said there's 7 or 10. Some scholars say 7.
Yeah.
Some say 10.
Yeah. Some say more, etc., etc.
So my question would be, if you have the difference between 7 and the 10, I mean, there's a difference of 3.
Are you talking about difference of ahruf or the categorization of ahruf?
What's the difference between?
That's what I just said.
No, in terms of the 7.
I'll just repeat. So let's just say you have certain variations.
Right.
So when you look at the variations, the issue is not that there are different words that you can say for one word. That's not the issue. The issue now is, how do you categorize it? Is it skeletal? Is it diacritical? Is it this or is it that? It's the categorization that there's difference in, not necessarily the ahruf themselves. Do you see?
But then how do you categorize something?
But that's how it comes afterwards, isn't it? So at the time of the Prophet, peace be upon him, you didn't need to categorize it because the qira'as were very few. It's only later, and again, this is something that requires a bit of unpacking. If I was to kind of just say it in a simple sentence, when I saw the tree, I was astounded. For astounded, now I could say, when I saw the tree, I was astounded, I was shocked, and then another word. Then I go forward, and there's 3 other words. Now, a qira'ah would be somebody who's reading it, and for the first one takes option A, and for the second one takes option B. All 6 are within the ahruf of the Quran. However, depending on the qari that's reciting it and who he's passed it on to, he might go for A, and then the second one he might go for B. Another one might go for B, and then for the other one go for C. Are you following me? Because I've got a picture in my head, but I don't know if you got to say. Yeah. So word A, B, C, then carry on sentence, then A, B, C, then you got A, then with B. But all 6 options are in the, verified by the Prophet. No difference of opinion. However, now the ones that you take will now cause the.
There are clearly differences, because if we look at, for example, Ibn Masud, it took a lot to. It almost took war for him to confirm and get rid of his codex, which his students still followed, but we still find evidence in Islamic literature of some of the verses, and even in the Hadith literature, of what some of the verses that were originally, which we do not find in today's Quran. So that's why I appeal to that man's statement that there are problems with the foundations of Islam. I wasn't appealing to his specific comment about Abdul Malik, because I didn't know too much about that, but the wider context is there are many holes in the foundational explanation of how.
You jumped the gun a little bit. Yeah, I'd say don't jump the gun don't commit yourself to something so quickly. Yeah. So we're done with the ABC. Thereafter, you said something. I was just going to respond, but I didn't. interrupt. I didn't want to interrupt you. Just remind me what you said. Just summarize it quickly.
About the differences.
Okay, Ibn Masud.
Yeah,
Masud.
Ibn Masud.
Right. So again, he is somebody from that same camp that people love to quote. But again, you need a chain of narration. That's where that was another evidence that I gave at the beginning when you asked about the historicity of Islam as well.
Right.
So we take isnad as well, and that's one of the conditions of us taking a qira'ah.
Right.
Yeah, that it needs to be mutawatir. Yeah, and that one is not mutawatir, so we don't take it. So just because it's historically available doesn't necessarily mean that it fulfills the criteria of our historicity.
Yeah, but we can find.
Have you just understood what I said?
Yeah, but
Okay.
the problem is, in terms of the Mutawati,
Yeah.
if we go to Sahih Bukhari,
Right.
we can find some of the verses which are verified by Ibn Masud. So we may not have the whole Quran.
When you say verses,
Yes.
do you mean verses or commentary? And is this Abdullah ibn Masud? Yeah.
Yeah. So I'll bring up a hadith so you can see what my point is.
Do you see why? Did you hear that?
Yeah, but I don't conduct myself.
Yeah.
I have a different approach, so that's why
look.
I would rather be judged by how I am than other people.
But here's one thing as well. You know Ali Dawa, yeah?
Yes.
Muhammad Hijab. If I heard him do that, I'd go to him right now, I'd tap him on the shoulder and say, stop doing that.
Right.
That's what I would do personally. That's the teaching that I have.
Well, I'm having a discussion with you, so I'm trying not to.
That's fine. I would stop this, I would go there, and then I'll come back.
Right, you're better man than me. I'll put it that way. So here is, for example, so I'll show it to you. I'll read it out first from Sahih al-Bukhari. So it says the companions of Abdullah ibn Masud came to Abu Darda. He looked at them and found. He then asked, "Who amongst you can recite the Quran?" Abdullah recites. They replied, "All of us." He asked, "Who amongst you knows it by heart?" They pointed to Al-Qama. Then he asked Al-Qama, "How did you hear Abdullah ibn Masud recite Surah Al-Layl?" Al-Qama recited by the male and the female. Abu Darda said, "I testify that I heard me Prophet reciting it likewise, but these people want me to recite it, and by him who created male and female. But by Allah, I will not follow them." So, and I'll show it to you. So the point is,
I can give you other narrations as well.
yeah. So that's what I'm saying. In terms of what you said about the Mutawatir, his codex, let's for argument's sake, may not be. However, we can see what some of the verses in it were. So that's why when you appeal to the Birmingham manuscript and say it's word for word, I'm asking what does that mean? Because if we see, for example, in another companion where there are verses that were in someone else's, in your authentic sources, then how can we say that that is word for word? There's clearly been differences in the Quran.
Yeah, so what you're doing is that you're skipping between two different categories. Yeah, so on the one hand, we have manuscripts. They're judged by their own merit. Then we have chains of narration, which are judged by their own merit. Hence, you've got mutawatir, you've got sahih, you've got this, you've got that. So again, the two are different. What I've done is, I was responding in terms of manuscript. You've given me a narration. Now, I don't understand what the point was. So you're saying that because there's that narration, what does that prove?
My question goes back to the Birmingham manuscript.
Oh, sorry,
or even a top copy.
Yeah. Let me just finish the point, yeah? Right. So you're saying that Abdullah bin Masud had a manuscript.
Yeah,
so he had a codex.
Yeah.
I'm not denying that he had a codex.
Right.
But now the question is, has that codex accurately reached us?
Well,
he may have a codex, but now we need to verify if that codex has reached us. I haven't looked into that.
Well, we don't have his codex, but my point was we can see some of the verses,
and that's fine,
that were there, but we can't find in the Quran that we have the Hafs recited.
Let me give you an example. There might be something that was said at the time of the Prophet, peace be upon him.
Right.
That was 1400 years ago.
Yes.
Now we have the science of hadith,
Right.
in which if we hear something today,
Right.
we need to be able to verify it.
Right.
So we have chains of narration.
Right.
That issue was not much of an issue at the time of the Prophet, peace be upon him, because the chains were so small. There was like a chain of one person.
Yes.
Because they were hearing it from the Prophet directly,
Right.
or maybe one or two generations. However, with us, it's different. That's why now we're looking at manuscripts.
Right.
They didn't look at manuscripts.
Yeah.
You see? So our kind of criteria is different. So when you're giving a hadith of Abdullah bin Mas'ud saying something,
Right.
fair enough, but that doesn't now conclude that the manuscript or what is known of Abdullah bin Mas'ud's codex is true, and we need to take the whole of it in its entirety.
Yeah.
You see?
But that's what I'm saying, because I didn't bring up the Birmingham manuscript, and
Yeah.
you did. Maybe the guy brought up before you. All I heard was you speaking on the Birmingham manuscript.
So his question
Right.
was based on Abdul Malik ibn al-Marwan saying that the Prophet was...
Yeah, and then you appealed to the Birmingham manuscript.
That was one of the evidence that I was doing. Yeah.
So that's why I then came in to say that question.
Yeah.
What does the word for word preservation? Well, you didn't say preservation, but you said it's like today. So
Yeah.
so that's what
And then
I
you
was
said
advocating.
then you said you don't know about it, you're going to check it, and
Well,
then
in terms of the order, because I don't know this specific text. So when you said everything is contained with it, so my point was, well, if we find, for example, the verse orders are incorrect or there's missing words from what we have today,
Yes.
that's what I would double check.
yeah, you can double check
Right.
that, no problem.
And then you had two other points you said there was 3 points. One was the Birmingham manuscript.
Yeah, chains of narration.
Chains of narration. Now, the problem with chains of narration, we cannot test it. We have people who will say this is what they claim they heard it from so and so and so and so. However, the problem is, unless we have text from the manuscript from the time or whatever, we've adjusted, we can't, as a fact, establish these are true chains of narration. For example, I appealed to Margin Van Hewen, and I can show you the evidence. So he said, from the manuscript evidence that we have, the early centuries of Islam, the manuscripts that we have, none of them correspond with the Hafs recitation, which is the majority recitation that everyone uses today. Now, your chains of narration would say Hafs goes all the way back to the Prophet, but it would be very strange that if all the manuscriptual evidence we have, we do not see any that correspond. And I'll show you the evidence just so from his own words. So that's why when I say yes, we can saying we have chains of narration is just a claim. It doesn't mean anything unless we can substantiate it with evidence.
But then the only problem with that is, and correct me if I'm wrong, that means that you are raising an issue against taking testimony as evidence, yeah? So if you're now raising an issue against taking testimony as evidence, then Christianity is going to be in big problem, because it appeals to testimony in a lot of cases. In fact, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. I mean, what evidence other than testimony evidence is there? I mean, you might say there's archaeological evidence here,